It'll go off like dynamite. Here, take this one.
They said at the fire extinguisher that you handed to Kenneth was filled with gasoline, that you killed him.
He handed me the extinguisher. He must have known there was gasoline in it.
The police! Maybe something's happened.
Why are you covering up Frank Fry? What's a man like you in this for?
Must I remind you that you are the fugitive from justice and not I?
Uncle Philip, he must be the man they're looking for.
My, they must be terribly in love.
Hey! 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 What is this? Halloween?
Stowaways.
Get them off.
Oh, Major, honey.
Don't honey me.
Hang on to your nerve.
I've been hanging on to my nerves. I've been hanging on long enough.
You know, somehow I've suddenly had enough of this country.
This whole house is a hotbed of spies and saboteurs.
I have something to tell you. Something you ought to know about this house. They bomb cities, sink ships, torture and murder so you and your friends can eat off a gold plate.
Oh, my husband! He's shot!
I neither intend to be bombed nor sunk, Mr. Kane.
A man like you can...
The script of Saboteur was developed under the aegis of David O. Selznick. And he had on it as writers Joan Harrison, who had come over to this country with Hitchcock and had worked with him on Rebecca, as a matter of fact, Peter Viertel, and eventually Dorothy Parker. Joan Harrison left to do Phantom Lady, which she produced. And this left Hitchcock with, I think, just Peter Viertel, who was about to go into the Marines. Selznick, finally getting this script, did what he often did with his players, and in this case his director. He tried to sell them to other people because he didn't want to make it. And he was not successful in selling it. He tried RKO, and he was finally successful in selling it to Jack Skirball and Frank Lloyd, who had a company.
I always consider Saboteur as my first reasonably important film. I had done a couple of things before that. One was Wolfman, which became a kind of a cult movie in itself. And Hitchcock, when he started Saboteur, wanted to have somebody who could do the continuity drawings, the storyboards. And I was there, so I was introduced to Hitchcock, and we seemed to hit it off on the first go-round. And much to my surprise, I was suddenly found myself working as the chief designer for Alfred Hitchcock. The idea was frightening, of course, because this was going to be a big picture. It was Hitchcock's first picture at Universal. It was an odd film because it had to do with the beginning of World War II. My first meeting with Hitchcock was here at Universal on a Sunday. We were working out some sequences, and he was making his little drawings. Late morning, the door burst open, and a man came in with one of these block hats, you know, the hard hats. And he said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Haven't you heard the Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor?" That was my beginning of Saboteur.
Well, at the time war broke out, I can remember that distinctly, September 3rd, and my father going to the phone to call his mother in England, and the operator saying, "I'm sorry, no more calls, that country is at war." And he was just devastated. My father was actually very roundly criticized. He and David Niven and other English people for not going back to England. English people sort of forgot that these people are under contract, and I can't quite see either David Selznick or Samuel Goldwyn letting their prized possessions to just take off and go back. He did go back during the war, and he made 2 films for the Free French.
Because of the beginning of the war, because after that we were completely involved in World War II, and you couldn't get anything. We couldn't work in any of the aircraft factories. It all had to be done on the back lot. So Saboteur became a real challenge. It would have been in any event, but for a young art director working with the master, Alfred Hitchcock, it was not easy.
It was in 1941, and I had been an actor by that time, a professional actor, for 9 years, when lo and behold, I get a call from John Houseman. John Houseman was under contract in 1941 to David O. Selznick, who also had Mr. Hitchcock under contract. And Hitch spoke with Houseman about finding an actor who was unknown for the part of the Saboteur. He wanted a young actor. In 1941, I was young. And he wanted a certain kind of actor. He described it. And did Houseman know anyone who might be suitable for this part? Houseman was good enough to recommend me, and then called me and told me that Mr. Hitchcock would be expecting my call at the St. Regis, and would I go up and meet with him. I did that. He was charming, set me at my ease, and then set up a test. He told me what the character was like, and I selected a scene from a play called Blind Alley, where I played a mad killer. And I did the scene. I was a very hyper theater actor at the time, and I understand that the test was very melodramatic and overplayed and big and the whole thing. But he saw something he wanted, and he cast me, because his instinct as an artist drew him to this very offbeat character, and it gave him a strangeness and a threat. Hitchcock, of course, always did a little cameo. He elected to do one in Saboteur. He took his secretary at the time, and the cameo he worked out is they walked down the street, and they played deaf and dumb people. And Hitchcock did deaf and dumb signs with her, and she slapped him in the face, meaning he had made an indecent proposal. Carol Stevens was her name, the secretary, and they walked along, and he's going that way, you see, and bam, she hits him. But it's not in the picture, because the powers that be felt that it was not a proper reflection of people who were handicapped. Having been defeated, if you will, on his very imaginative cameo, he ended up just making an appearance, standing on the street. It didn't have the color, shall we say.
But of course, the live-action people, live-action police, and then we would get smaller vehicles going back, and then finally we got to miniatures, and then way in the background there were just cutouts. The problem was the people, so we had full-size people and then little people, and it worked beautifully. I saw it recently, and I said, well, it works.
Hitchcock had a favorite phrase called camera logic. And I once asked him what he meant by that. He said, the camera is exactly where it should be to tell the story. That seems very simple. Seems to be a phrase that anyone would be aware of, but it's not so, particularly today. Hitch had a wonderful improvisatory gift. We were shooting one day, and news came in that the Normandy, which was then the largest liner in the world, had caught fire and had capsized onto its side in its pier, way over on the west side of New York, where all the piers were for the liners that would be going to Europe. The Normandy had been commissioned to be a troop transport, and Hitch ordered Universal Newsreel to get all the footage they could of that. And when the stuff arrived, he ordered a mock-up, that is a fake taxi, and put me in it, and had me supposedly riding down the West Side Highway, and I come out on that balcony of the statue, and Bob Cummings is out there. He makes this move, which frightens me, and I go backwards over the railing and catch between the thumb and the forefinger of the hand. Hitchcock said to me, "Can you do a backflip over that railing?" But I was a young actor, flexible, so forth. I said, "Of course." And he was pleased, because it meant that he could be right on me instead of, an angle or a double doing it with the back. Now, the next cut was my going through the air. And that was done by Davy Sharp, who is the greatest stuntman. And he looked a little like me. We were built about the same way. And he went through the air, nothing holding him, no cords, no strings, nothing. Just flew through the air and caught right in there with his two hands. It's absolutely fantastic to see him do it. One take, as I recall. But as a technical feat, it's extraordinary. Now came the moment of truth, the fall. There was no equipment such as you have today. There were no graphics. There were no computers, just a camera and a piece of scenery. They built a platform and had a hole in it. And the camera could shoot through that hole. And this platform was suspended from the top of the stage.
This was black and white film. Today, you would probably, if it was in color, you would have used blue or green screen for the effects. But there we used black. So when Norman Lloyd fell, he was sitting on a regular swivel chair,
which was really not a chair. It was like a saddle on a pipe,
painted black against a black background. That didn't expose on the film, so we put in matte shots.
This platform with the camera and the hand attached and my line went up into the air to the roof.
Stage 12, I believe, was around 40 feet high, and the camera just went like that,
leaving me seated on this saddle, doing various balletic movements as if I was falling. I don't know if I could do it today, but anyway, all those movements of falling, and of course, the great scream, which was my scream. Well, one is just like a kid in a toy shop. I was just in fantasy land with it. It was just so great. And to see myself on the outside of Radio City, where it opened, they had these great things on the wall of the exterior of the theater where they put photographs from the film. And there I am with the gun, and so looking. I used to take actor friends along and say, "Would you like to take a walk?" And we'd walk. And I'd always come by. I'd say, "Oh, look." The guys were flabbergasted. In the course of making Saboteur, I'm proud to say that Hitchcock and I became good friends. And subsequently, he cast me in Spellbound. Then in 1957, he had been put in the television business by MCA.
Good evening.
And he was the star of the show. He was on every week, and he loved it. the end of the second year, there was a series called Suspicion, and they felt they needed more help in the making of these Suspicion pictures, as well as doing Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And in those days, we do 39 of them, half-hour shows. So they sent for me and put me into this position as associate producer. Eventually, I became producer and then executive producer. What I loved when I worked with him was, if he was pleased, there would be a kind of twinkle in his eye at what he saw. And if you could produce that twinkle in his eye, you knew you were okay. When Hitchcock developed this story, which he developed initially, others wrote it, he was very much influenced by himself, namely his first really big hit, which was the 39 Steps. The structure of that piece is a hero who is mistakenly fingered as a guilty man and therefore has to flee. And the picture takes the form of the various places he is fleeing to until finally he achieves justice. This is a favorite Hitchcock structure. In Saboteur, there was a very strong resemblance in its structure to the 39 Steps, with the handcuff.